Check this out.
What should a woman do if her man can't afford to pay all her bills?
To all my sisters, listen carefully. If he can't pay all your bills, don't find another man. Find a job.
Welcome back. It's so great to have you here with us for another deep dive.
Yes, we are really thrilled you're listening today.
We really are. And today we are asking a question that completely upends how we usually look at history.
A massive pivot.
Right. What if the way we traditionally view oppression, power, and resistance is just completely backward?
It's a huge question to grapple with.
It is. What if the conventional historical narratives you and I have been taught are actually missing the true core of the dynamic?
And today we have a really fascinating stack of source material to help us look into exactly that.
We do. We're looking at a collection of notes, excerpts, and writings from a piece titled Genetic Grip: The DNA of Black Cultural Resistance.
Written by an author who goes by the name of the Reverend Point Blank.
Yes, the Reverend Point Blank.
Millions of dreams deferred, degrees in hand, empty streets, black minds sharp as steel but left unseen in white heat. We asked for discipline, a plan, a path, but we were met with silence in a systematic aftermath. They taught us to chase a dream, but left us adrift in a blanketless desert where hope starts to shift. We were kings and queens born from gold, yet we forget the wealth we already hold. A woman's touch, a balm, a cure. Yet they taught us fear when love should endure. We stand tall from past kings and queens. We rise, we heal, we know what it means. We focus our power, our unity. That is their threat. And together we are powerful, so we are not done yet. We build from truth, from love, and from the bottom grit. We are the future of this world. We rise from all this shit. No time is guaranteed, but death is. What will you do with the most valuable asset on the planet that is here for us, and it is? We are creators of God, grand and divine. So in our journey, we must learn to master the 9. 9 months to gestation, 9 times 9. Well, it equals what? You do the math. Then inform your staff, point blank. Enjoy your time because you're already being governed by the 9. And then watch the 9 returns. Learn how it's used. Just go to the Reverend Point Blank on YouTube and check it out. Peace and love.
And our mission for this deep dive is to explore the author's incredibly unique framework.
Which is?
Well, he attempts to entirely redefine racism, stripping it of its usual framing as merely a social or like a political issue, and instead he classifies it as a severe psychological illness.
And on the flip side of that coin, he frames Black American culture as an unbroken biological chain of resistance.
It is a dense, provocative read, and we're going to break it all down for you.
But before we really get into the weeds, I do want to take a moment to explicitly set the parameters for our conversation today.
Yeah, that is crucial.
It is. The text we are examining deals with highly sensitive, politically charged concepts about race, supremacy, and historical trauma.
Very intense material.
Exactly. Right, and how language is used to challenge those traditional narratives.
Exactly. We are here to map out the ideas so you can see the architecture of the argument. So with that in mind, okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it.
Point Blank starts by completely flipping the script on how we define white supremacy.
He really does.
Usually when people discuss racism, the conversation centers around hatred, ignorance, or systemic bias.
Things that are learned or built into institutions.
Right, but the author says that framing is entirely insufficient. He explicitly defines racism as a deep psychological sickness.
Not just a passing societal trend.
No, a normalized, institutionalized pathology passed down like a generational curse.
That specific phrasing is very deliberate, and it's the cornerstone of his entire thesis.
The psychological angle.
Yes. The author's taking clinical psychological terminology and applying it to historical behavior. He literally describes white supremacy as pathology.
Which changes everything about how you look at the history.
It does. He makes the case that dedicating centuries to building systems, laws, religions, and global economies, specifically to justify stealing from, hurting, and shaming an entire demographic of people, is not the behavior of a rational mind. He calls it textbook mental instability.
And the root of this pathology, according to his framework, isn't inherently hatred.
No.
It's fear.
Right, and he gets very specific about what kind of fear.
Exactly. The fear of equality.
The fear of accountability.
And ultimately the fear of losing control.
He argues that this deep-seated generational fear creates a massive delusion. And that delusion ultimately manifests as violence and domination.
I can hear some listeners pausing here, though.
Oh, sure.
Framing an entire historical system of global economics and law as just mental instability, does the author risk oversimplifying how systemic economics actually work?
It's a great question, and it's one the text actually seems to anticipate.
Okay, how so?
He doesn't deny the economics. Rather, he addresses the scale of the delusion required to make those economics function. Think about the cognitive dissonance required to sustain chattel slavery.
Mental gymnastics.
Precisely. To sustain the transatlantic slave trade, you need more than just a few greedy actors.
Right, it was an entire societal structure.
The author argues that white supremacy required a mass delusion so powerful that it convinced an entire society that atrocities were not only acceptable, but morally justified.
To look at another human being, who he describes as a whole creation of God, and believe you are inherently superior just because of the melanin in their skin,
requires an absolute disassociation from reality.
Disassociation from reality. That's a strong phrase.
It requires intense cognitive distortion and a complete systemic lack of empathy.
What's really striking is how that disassociation shifts the balance of power.
What's fascinating here is the rhetorical pivot he makes. By framing oppression as a symptom of a mental illness, he suggests that the harm inflicted on Black people over generations was actually a mirror of the harm inside the oppressors themselves.
Wow.
He's arguing that mentally whole, confident, and emotionally healthy people simply do not need to dominate others. They don't wake up and invent oppressive systems.
And that is the massive paradigm shift of this text. It takes the concept of historical power and completely deflates it.
Right.
Instead of viewing the oppressor as strong and the oppressed as weak, this framework views the oppressor as profoundly sick and broken.
And the oppressed are simply the ones forced to endure the fallout of that illness.
It totally rewrites the narrative.
Yeah.
And that transitions us perfectly into the second major theme of his notes.
How the people enduring that illness actually responded.
Yes. Point Blank lays out a timeline. And he makes it clear that for Black Americans, resistance isn't some modern political movement.
It isn't just the civil rights era.
Right, it is foundational. He claims this culture of resistance began the exact second they encountered European domination on the shores of the Atlantic.
Yes, from that initial point of contact, there was never a period where Black people did not resist the encroachment of what the text refers to as the white man.
He describes a very specific, relentless dynamic.
He notes that the opposing force has a nature behavior of authority. No matter where they go, this authoritative force will always try to step to the front at the line.
It's a constant pressure.
A constant attempt to keep Black people from excelling and to keep them divided.
And the psychological toll of that constant pressure is something he brings up in a really poignant way. He notes that Black Americans have never been able to relax or just be.
Just think about the weight of that for a second.
The idea that your mere existence requires a constant state of vigilance. If you're living in a society where your space is constantly being violated, from the moment you are born, your sympathetic nervous system is basically in overdrive.
You are in a perpetual state of resistance.
Which brings up the crucial question. How does a community survive that level of constant vigilance without collapsing?
The author argues that they didn't just take it, and they didn't just fight back physically. The resistance, as he beautifully puts it, balsams out into the culture.
Wait, balsams out like a balm? A healing ointment?
Exactly. A balsam is an aromatic resin used for healing or soothing. The author is suggesting this resistance isn't just a brace of friction.
It transforms.
Right, it transforms into a soothing, pervasive cultural force. He is making the case that everyday Black American culture is, in and of itself, an act of active resistance.
I love how he breaks that down. He takes everyday things, how people dress, the music they create, the way they talk, and reframes them not just as entertainment, but as survival tactics.
He specifically points to coded languages that most people today just consider slang.
And if we look at history, that's not a metaphor. From spirituals mapping out escape routes on the Underground Railroad,
To the evolution of African American vernacular English as a way to communicate safely and build community in the open.
language has always been a tool of survival. Point Blank frames all of this cultural expression as everyday innovation born out of absolute necessity.
And he makes a huge economic and cultural claim right after that.
He does. He states that while there is always an attempt to downplay Black contributions to the global tapestry,
The reality is that their number one export is Black innovation.
he goes so far as to call this innovation the life force that brings everything into this nation.
It's a bold assertion. The culture that was literally born out of resisting the sickness of oppression is actually the primary engine driving the culture of the entire country.
It's an undeniable point when you look at global cultural exports. American music, fashion, and vernacular are fundamentally rooted in Black innovation.
But here's where the author takes his sociological argument and pushes it into an entirely different realm.
Right, here's where it gets really interesting. Because he doesn't just stop at culture or history or even psychology.
He takes it a step further into biology.
The title of the piece is Genetic Grip, and he is using that literally. He argues that this instinct to resist, this profound feeling in the soul and spirit that just says no when things aren't right, is actually built in our DNA.
He believes this resistance is passed down through genetic inheritance.
And for you listening, if you're familiar with the science of epigenetics, this concept might ring a bell.
Epigenetics studies how behaviors and environment can cause changes that affect the way your genes work.
We often hear about generational trauma, how the physiological stress of oppression can literally alter DNA expression in subsequent generations.
But Point Blank is flipping that narrative. He's acknowledging the trauma, but he's arguing that centuries of surviving have also embedded resilience at a cellular level.
That is such an empowering flip. He writes, the miracle is, though the sickness tried to break us, we never broke.
I mean, despite immense crushing pressure, they built families, they built churches, they built businesses.
As he puts it, we never choked.
And what he considers the ultimate proof of that survival is the creation of beauty.
The text states that through music, art, and innovation, their touch made the world flourish and shine.
He frames this as the ultimate victory. Creating beauty in the face of relentless pathology is, according to his framework, the unmistakable sign of a healed mind, a resilient mind, a divine mind in time.
When he says a divine mind in time, think about it practically. If you are locked in a high-stress, abusive, systemic pressure cooker, the natural human response is to shut down.
To just survive the day.
But to actually create beautiful art, jazz, hip-hop, fashion, and joy inside that environment. Point Blank is saying that requires a mind that has completely transcended the trauma.
Exactly. The healed mind stands in direct contrast to the sick mind of the oppressor we discussed earlier.
It is a powerful dichotomy.
The oppressor is trapped in a mental illness that produces violence and delusion. The oppressed, despite enduring the trauma of that violence, have maintained a resilient, divine mind capable of producing culture and community.
He argues that studying history is vital, not so you can dwell on the pain, but so you remember your ancestors and don't internalize their games.
It's about knowing you are a descendant of greatness and refusing to let a sick system define your reality.
As you read deeper into his notes, you can actually feel the rhythm of the language start to change.
Yes.
He suddenly moves away from prose and drops right into poetic verse. We start seeing these rhyming couplets woven directly into the text.
Lines like, the real mental illness is racism. The real strength is the black mind that survived time.
It reads exactly like spoken word poetry.
It does, and the use of poetry there serves a very specific function. It elevates the argument from a dry historical critique into something much more spiritual and anthemic.
It reinforces the emotional resonance of everything he's just argued.
And it's within this poetic section that he introduces a unifying biological claim. He states that, ultimately, the oppressors must wake up and understand that everyone is derived from the same carbon seed hand in hand.
Yes. He explicitly argues that no two white people can create a dark baby.
He uses that biological reality as evidence to assert that humanity is ultimately one family, bound by the divine.
He's using basic Mendelian genetics to make a profound philosophical point.
He's pointing out that melanin is a dominant foundational human trait. By doing so, he is flipping the historical narrative of white superiority completely on its biological head.
It is a complex rhetorical maneuver.
He fiercely condemns the pathology of white supremacy, calling it a mass delusion, while simultaneously asserting an undeniable biological linkage between all people.
It is a reminder of our shared humanity, even when one group has historically operated under a delusion that denied that very fact.
It's a brilliant way to ground the spiritual argument in hard science.
But just when you think you have a complete handle on where Point Blank is going, the notes end on this incredibly cryptic, almost mystical note.
A total shift.
He suddenly shifts gears away from genetics and history and writes, I understand the cosmos and numerology and I count to 9.
And then he just throws out this math puzzle.
He asks, 9 times 465 reverts back to what? Now you do the math and inform your staff.
And he signs off with Master the 9, peace and much love.
It is quite the pivot.
It really is. I was reading this thinking, wait, what does 9 times 465 have to do with anything?
So I actually did the math.
And what did you find?
Okay, so 9 times 465 equals 4,185.
Mm-hmm.
At first, that just looks like a random number.
Mm-hmm.
But if you know anything about the numerology of the number 9, there's a mathematical rule.
What's the rule?
Any number multiplied by 9 will always result in a product whose individual digits add back up to 9.
Let's break that down for the listener.
Right, so you take that answer, 4,185, add the digits together, 4 plus 1 plus 8 plus 5, that equals 18.
Okay.
Then you take 18 and add those digits, 1 plus 8, and you are right back to 9.
Fascinating.
No matter how large or complicated the number you multiply by 9 gets, it always reduces back to its source. It always reverts back to 9.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, ending on this esoteric mathematical puzzle is a massive rhetorical power move.
How so?
By introducing numerology in the cosmos and posing a riddle that requires you to actually do the math to understand the underlying law, he is asserting a level of intellectual mastery.
He's saying, I know the hidden rules of the universe.
Exactly. It forces you to engage. It implies that the author possesses an understanding of universal laws that completely transcends the historical and societal sickness he just spent the entire text deconstructing.
Just like the number 9 always returns to itself.
Right. Despite being multiplied by complex external factors, the carbon seed, that original divine human nature, always endures and returns to its true state, regardless of the oppressive systems layered on top of it.
Wow. That is brilliant. It totally changes the vibe of the ending.
That does.
It's like he's saying, I've just broken down the clinical pathology of history, I've mapped out the genetics of cultural resistance, and now I'm leaving you with a cosmic truth to decode on your own. It's a total mic drop.
It leaves the reader actively engaged. You aren't just passively absorbing his theories, you are doing the math, testing the laws, and proving his point for yourself.
So what does this all mean? For you, listening to this deep dive right now, whether you're commuting to work or just intensely curious about history, why does a text like Genetic Grip matter?
It's the core question.
I think it shows us the incredible power of reframing. Understanding this text isn't just about absorbing one author's interpretation of the past. It's a masterclass in seeing how communities can radically reclaim their narrative power.
The Reverend Point Blank uses language to completely flip the traditional dynamic.
He takes the old story of the powerful versus the powerless and rewrites it as the sick versus the healed.
He transforms everyday things like the slang you use, the music you listen to, the way you walk,
into profound acts of historical survival and genetic resistance.
It challenges you to look at the world and the power structures operating within it through a completely different, much more critical lens.
It really does challenge our foundational assumptions.
And that raises an important question, something I want to leave you to mull over as we wrap up today.
Well, hear it.
If we follow the logic of Point Blank's argument, the idea that systemic oppression required a societal mass delusion and a complete disassociation from reality in order to function, what does that mean for the modern institutions that were built upon those very systems?
Right.
If the foundation of a modern legal system or a global economy was originally laid by a collective pathology, can that societal structure ever truly be cured?
Or are the people operating within those institutions today inherently forced to navigate and uphold a distorted reality forever?
That is a heavy, fascinating question to leave off on. Can the building ever be structurally sound if the concrete foundation was poured during a mass delusion?
That is exactly the kind of critical thinking this source material demands of us.
It really is.
Thank you so much for joining us as we unpack this incredibly dense, provocative deep dive.
Keep questioning the narratives around you.
Keep looking for those deeper meanings, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.
You have become very successful now. What do people say about you?
Some congratulate me. Some say they are proud. Some say money is now controlling me.
Well, money does change people.
Really? But nobody complained when poverty was in charge.